Get ready to stir it up.
With real conversations, let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between, let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping, Ikea's got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Welcome to Stir It Up. Today, I have Dr. Seth Asafo, and we're going to be talking about the power within, discovering your value through adversity. How many times have I fought with you about talking about resilience building?
1 trillion.
So my question is, do I have to suffer to build resilience?
Yes,
I have to suffer.
absolutely.
Hey,
The other day we were talking about pleasure and pain. And I tried to explain to you that the more pain we seek, the more happiness we gain. And the more pleasure we seek, the more pain we also gain. And the reality is, if you look at resilience, resilience allows us to be able to deal with a myriad of issues regardless of how difficult they are.
Yeah.
But building up to it is where the key thing is. And I always like to talk about the gym analogy.
Okay.
When people start going to the gym, the first day you go to the gym and you come back, your muscles are all sore. But you work through it, and it gets to a point where you go to the gym and you don't feel any muscle soreness or fatigue. I mean, normal fatigue, yes, because your body has now adapted to that particular stressor.
I hear you. I hear you, but
Are you?
you know, I mean, the first time you and I ever talked about resilience was in probably our first or second episode. And you said cheating builds resilience. I don't know if you remember that
Absolutely.
conversation. And you and I have since subsequently, between you, myself, and Sharon, we've subsequently had like 100 conversations on resilience and like, why do I have to suffer to build resilience, right?
Yeah.
I see it, I get it, but it's so, I almost feel like it shouldn't be that way.
True. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are other ways to build resilience that don't necessarily require pain in the right sense of the word.
Yeah.
But resilience building requires going through some discomfort, whether you like it or not.
Some experiences that make you uncomfortable.
And I mean, you take marriage as an example. Everybody wants to go into marriage and you have a fairy tale in your mind.
Wow.
Except when the marriage starts, you realize all things are not the same.
Yeah.
Now, resilient people are still able to endure those supposed discomforts until a place where it's smooth sailing.
Yeah.
That's what resilience is.
It's like me not thinking every fight is the end of a relationship,
There you go.
right? Because it's just part of the journey, and it's how we navigate that conflict within the moment.
Absolutely.
All right, let's kick it. So we've talked resilience for the past 3 minutes or however long. What is resilience?
Well, simply put, resilience is our ability to bounce back even when we're going through adversity. That's all it is. It assumes the notion that there is nothing that is smooth sailing. Life is undulating.
Yeah.
You have ups, you have downs. And so I always like the wedding vows, for better, for worse. Because the reality is you will go through the better and you'll go through the worse.
Yeah.
Your ability to enjoy the better and also endure the worse is resilience. So you are not looking to back out as soon as there's a challenge. You are not willing to escape when you meet a stumbling block. Yet you are rather intrigued in, I will get past this challenge. And once you get past it, you have a dose of excitement at having achieved such a significant milestone.
You know, there are people who are conflict averse. They struggle with engaging with others. There are people who don't know how to navigate a difficult situation. How do they get to the point where they begin to think, I can get over this challenge? Because it doesn't seem to be naturally ingrained in them. They think that every situation is the end of the world.
So I don't also think that it's naturally ingrained of them to be avoidant.
Okay.
They have learned it.
It's a learned behavior.
They have come to notice that that's another way to deal with the situation.
Okay.
Now, you know, severally I've talked about coping mechanisms and I've talked about positive and negative. And I've mentioned that Every coping mechanism does its job. It gives you some respite, it gives you some comfort, except it's not lasting.
Okay.
So if I'm conflict averse, I can only deal with the challenge for a short period of time. But another one will come in and it will just bring the old one into focus.
Right.
And I have to keep escaping and escaping and escaping, which doesn't solve the problem. But solving the problem means dealing with it. And if it means going through a conflict and being uncomfortable in the situation,
Even for an extended period of time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
After that, everything settles. I tell many people to look at it this way. When you have somebody you have a conflict with, you'll notice that immediately after the conflict, there's a lot of tension.
Yeah.
But after some time, there's a new respect that builds between you and that person. Like, you don't step on each other's toes. And it tells you that it's the way we handle the conflict that's most important, not the conflict in itself.
The environment you are in, whether in your childhood or your adulthood, does it impact how resilient you become or you are?
It does. It does. I am of the school of thought that says resilience is tied directly to self-efficacy, which
Okay.
is our sense of self in terms of how worthy we are, how adaptable we are, how we're able to, deal with life's challenges. Now, you see, if you're not given enough opportunity to interact with the world and deal with the challenges, you normally don't build self-worth, which means you might never build resilience. So you may build avoidant resilience. I won't say anything. And you'll be drinking air. Is what you keep saying. And yet the pain is there, it's causing a ripple effect. But the people that are able to navigate by facing, dealing and overcoming, they are those who build that skill. Now, we know that if you consider the brain as a muscle, it's an organ. But I like to tell people, look at the brain as a muscle and think about how muscles work. You work the muscle, it gets stronger, it gets more sophisticated, and the thing that was more difficult for you to do then becomes very easy to do. So it's the same principle when it comes to resilience building.
Okay. So there are a few things that apparently build resilience, okay?
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you each of them and see if you have a real life example for people. So the first one is mental fortitude.
Yes.
Can you describe it to us like we were in class 3?
Okay.
How does mental fortitude build resilience?
I will explain this using a student I worked with in the medical school. And he wasn't the brightest of students, but he had this thing of, whatever it takes to be a doctor,
I'll do it.
I'll do it. He failed severally. He made his way to rewrite. There were even times where he had to repeat a whole year. Guess what?
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor. That's mental fortitude. That's finding the way power and the willpower, regardless of the odds. And it comes from a simple mindset, I would do it. I have known people who have said things like, I'm going to achieve this. And at the time when they even said it, I was saying, well, this is
but
not
you don't
even-
look like you're heading there.
It's not even realistic to say you make this amount of money. They had that fortitude that they are capable. They were able to do it. Of course, the timeline was not the same. But the effect of, even in the face of adversity, they are still able to what? To move on. That's mental fortitude.
The next one is emotional regulation.
Absolutely. Largely, human beings are controlled by their emotions.
Okay.
Everything that happens in our environment causes the feeling of a certain emotion. So let's say if I hit a stumbling block and I have that emotion of sadness, okay, and I dwell on the emotion of sadness, I'm likely to get into a learned helplessness, a feeling of I can't do anything, and I will stay within that just because of the emotion. Now remember that emotions cause us to act in one way or the other. So your thoughts influence your emotions influence your action. So if I'm not able to regulate my emotions, what it means is most of the time I'm stuck to just the emotion.
Yeah.
But the lessons or why I'm experiencing the emotion,
I never learned.
They are never learned. They never come into focus. So I can't do anything about it. So I'm very angry. I don't know why I'm angry. And I'm focusing on, why am I so angry? and I'm probably blaming everybody else.
But not even taking the responsibility to introspect.
Which part have I played in there? Yeah. So I always talk about the fact that in life we control what we can, and what we cannot control, we let go of.
Yeah.
That's part of emotions. So I meet a situation, I'm like, this thing, I can't do anything about it realistically. So what do?
Let it go.
You let it go.
So when you talked about learned helplessness, once again, I remember our first conversation about learned helplessness, and it was around how a lot of women are both men and women are in relationship where there's learned helplessness. It's almost like you feel like you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that, right? Especially in the context of a marriage.
Okay. So you see, learned helplessness occurs when, with humans, we're motivated to always find solutions. That's our natural nature, okay? So when you're in any problem, you will try to do certain things about it. Now, you get to a point where your brain just shuts down. Like the former president would say, deadwood syndrome. So, I'm tired. I can't do anything about it.
I've done it.
I've done my best. There. Now, what that does is it saps your energy and consistently keeps you within the zone. But even within the state of feeling you can't do anything, there are still a lot of things that you can do. For instance, if I'm in a relationship that's not thriving, because my sense of connection is my partner must validate me, and they are not validating me, does that mean that as a person, I cannot evaluate myself to see my worth?
Yeah.
So learned helplessness would be more external, whilst if I look at, well, I've been able to achieve so much as I'm here. I'm changing the scenario. And it comes back to the kind of evidence and the kind of internal lingua that comes to the brain. The chatter you have with yourself is very important here.
The next one was problem solving, but I think that anyone who's resilient is always looking to the solution and not focusing on the problem, isn't it?
And beyond that is such people consistently set goals. And when they set goals, they have 1, 2, 3, up to 1,000 different ways to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
See, when you're very rigid, so a main concept in resilience is flexibility. Adaptability and being flexible around your thought and your action. If I say I have to get here through this method and it's not working, and I can find another way. So people tell you that resilience is like water. It can flow into any corner, regardless of the stones, or it will keep building to a point where it flows over. That's what resilience is like.
Okay. So I remember in one of the very early management courses I did, they talked about it. You will fail, right?
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you're going to be in a situation and you're going to fail. It's not about that fall or that failure. It's about the recovery.
There you go.
Right.
There's a motivational speaker. His name is John Kabat-Zinn, and he talks about the fact that the road to happiness is understanding that life is unfair. So just understanding that things won't always work the way you want them means you're aware even before it comes.
Yeah. You expect it.
You expect it. And so when it happens, you're like, oh yeah, it's painful, but I know that it would have come. I always say it's an accident to fall. It's a choice to stay down. And they keep telling you to move. Now, interestingly, within neuroscience, we know that the chemical dopamine is responsible for motivation. But the same dopamine is also responsible for movement. So when you move, like to move, you need dopamine. Now, doesn't it tell us how keeping moving is an interesting thing when it comes to building motivation, which is the key attribute of motivation, of resilience. Yeah.
So, that growth that we've been talking about, I'm refusing to look at you on my camera. That growth we've been talking about, right?
I'll look away too.
You're also looking away. It's the day of looking away. Listen.
Yeah.
I see it, right? It's almost like when you've been through an experience and you feel like this thing is going to kill me, it's going to knock me off my feet, and you are able to come on the other side of it. Suddenly, it doesn't look like a mountain anymore. And you've built tools, you've amassed tools and amassed experience that allows you to not be as fearful anymore. Right. What is it with some people who do not learn from their experiences? Why is it some people do not learn from their experiences?
So you see, in every challenge, there are two sides.
Yeah.
The challenge and the lessons.
Okay.
There are people who choose to focus on the challenge. And if you focus on the challenge, you become hyper-focused. In fact, when the body goes through a stressor, it hyper-focuses because the brain looks at every situation as dangerous. And it needs to focus. So in that focus, it's not seeing anything around it to problem solve. But you are focused on a certain challenge that you cannot solve. Now, if I go through a challenge, say I fail an exam, and I am fussing over, I failed the exam, I feel down. If I focus on, yeah, I failed the exam, but at least I now have a feel of what this exam is about. The learning from that empowers me.
Sure.
So it comes back to perspective taking. The way you choose to see the situation, and like I've said once and said many times, we are what we think. The evaluations we make, they become part of us. Why is it that some of us are able to let go so easily?
And others no.
Don't. Because some just say, "Charlie, this thing is not putting food on my table, is it? So why worry?" And then you let it slide. But more importantly, if you haven't experienced it, you won't know it.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people who focus on the challenge, it's because they've never been able to learn from it, to see the benefit of the learning. That's why they keep on focusing. That's what they know. And this is why sometimes having other people give you perspective is important, just to open your mind to other things that perhaps your narrow gaze may not be seeing.
So before we go into self-worth, if you were to talk to someone who was struggling with being resilient, and there were 3 things you could say to this person about building resilience and building themselves up, what would those 3 things
First thing is you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be patient.
I agree.
Yes. You have to be patient with yourself.
Go through it.
Go through
Allow
it.
yourself to feel everything.
Allow yourself to feel it. It's the only way the muscle builds.
Yes.
That's the first thing. The second thing is don't make comparisons.
Okay.
You
I
see,
agree.
we deal with things very differently. So if you're making comparisons based on what other people are doing, it might make you start to feel like perhaps I don't have it. And the third thing, be careful not to want to cope with it temporarily.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest way out. I don't want this person, but I can't stand them not being around, so I will keep reaching out to them. I can't, but so you keep engaging, and then, you're getting little hits of excitement, but
It's
you
not
have a
long
basket
term.
of
It's
pain.
empty.
Yes.
It's empty.
So those would be my 3 most important things.
I think the one I love the most is being patient
Be
with
patient.
yourself.
It takes time.
Yeah. A lot of the time when you have an experience, be it work, relationships, with your family and so on, whilst you are in it, it's hard to navigate. It can be confusing. You feel let down. And sometimes you just feel completely unable to cope, right?
Yes.
But a lot of the time we are tempted to jump to something that soothes it and comforts us, right?
Exactly.
But I am finding that if I allow myself to feel every emotion, if I allow myself to understand why this has happened to me, the role I played in it, especially the role I played, by the time I've been through that healing journey or recovery or solves that problem, the lessons are so palpable that I will not make that mistake again.
They become a part of you.
They become a part of
Exactly. And always remember, always remember to think about your past victories.
Yeah.
Remember, life is so repetitive.
Yeah.
So the things that you're going through today that seem so gargantuan, I'm borrowing the words.
Yes.
Okay.
We are boring.
Those things, you've been through some of them before, and it passed, and you were like, is that all?
Yes.
And if you start to understand that there is nothing that lasts forever, even pain is not perpetual.
Yes.
At some point, pain will peak.
Yeah. And then you get some
And
comfort.
then exactly. So remembering those things will make you know that, okay, yeah, I'm struggling now, but it will pick up somewhere. Once it does so, I'll come to a place of calm. That reality will keep you going no matter what.
Okay.
Am I ringing? So am I dialing some
No,
numbers?
you've dialed the area code.
Okay.
You've dialed the right number. I've said hello, hi, what's up? We've had a 1 hour conversation. I've said bye. I've said I love you.
That's good.
All of that.
That's good.
No, you are so spot on. And I think that we take it for granted that our experiences are actually fuel for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't like the idea, don't get me wrong.
Nobody
but
does.
they are.
It's uncomfortable, so
Yeah.
nobody likes it.
Okay.
But it's real.
Let's go to self-worth. And you know that self-worth is one of the things that I like talking about. You and I have talked about the things we talk about. Self-worth
Plenty.
ad nauseum, right? Now, if you were to tell a 13-year-old what self-worth was as a teenager,
Yeah.
what would you be saying?
So self-worth is accepting yourself for who you are, what you can do, what you cannot do. In a sense, beyond, and when many people talk about self-worth, they talk about what you can do, but I also talk about what you cannot do. You see, the acceptance of your limitations is embedded also within your self-worth, so that you are not fretting over it.
Today you came with gems, so...
After I've eaten wachi.
You came with gems
Yes.
today.
Accepting of your limitations. As for me, I'm not good at this. It's a good limitation to acknowledge.
Yeah.
So when people call you out on it, it doesn't put you in a place where you are...
You're not defensive.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
self-worth is accepting who you are in totality for your goods and your bads.
So I have a few thoughts for you, and then you share your views on those thoughts. What you are told as a child and what you are telling yourself influences your self-worth.
Absolutely.
Tell us more.
Absolutely. You see, they'll tell you that the power of words, words create pictures in everybody's minds, whether you like it or not. Okay? So when someone starts to say things to you, your brain creates a picture of it. Now, the more you hear certain words or expressions, those pictures become like mainstays in your mind.
Correct.
And so we work with dozens of people who, even today, are like CEOs of multinationals and big conglomerates, but they have an imposter syndrome. Because when they were growing up, their parents used to tell them, hey, you are not of this status. Hey, you know, those kinds of things. Now, even now that they have all this portfolio in front of them, the words they used to tell them has a significant impact on them. Like the same way somebody tells their child, you'll be a great person, you'll be this, you'll be this. And the child creates a picture, and that picture creates what I call a pathway to that achievement. Not to say that when people have been left in that kind of mindset, nothing can be done about it.
Yeah.
Because there's always evidence that's produced. So for example, you are in that position now. Who got there? You are Rianfoba. You challenged and you were with whoever's children and you are here today. That is evidence to show that you are worthy. And that was based on your own abilities and limitations. Now, I like the limitation part a lot. So I work with them and I tell them, your feeling of being an imposter is humility also.
It is.
And if you change the narrative, you become more empowered than saying, I don't fit the role.
And you become empowered to learn,
Of
to do
course.
something about it,
Absolutely.
to try and understand, and even when you can't learn it yourself, you are aware that this is an area where I need to build capacity in, if it's
Beautiful.
in the workplace.
So you may not have to cope like many other people who put others down. To feel big.
Yeah. So we're talking a bit about what you are told as a child. Let's say you were told all these negative things as a child. I say you need to be your own personal hype man or hype woman.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, what do you now tell yourself? So the next one for me is, what do you tell yourself on a daily basis? Does that impact your self-worth?
It does, especially when it's realistic. Now,
Okay.
mind you, you can say certain things to yourself, and your brain has a hard time trying to figure out, can I achieve it or not?
Okay.
Which then becomes a stressor.
Yes.
In a way. Now, I always make this analogy of when people say they are fasting and praying, the thing they do most when they fast and pray
think about food.
is think about, they look at the time. On that single day, they'll be looking at the clock for so long. Why? Because suddenly it's come to focus, 6 to 6, I can't eat.
Yeah.
But there are many days in which...
It's 5 o'clock and you haven't eaten anything and you
nothing
felt
else.
nothing.
There you go.
Yeah, I know.
So you see, when you say things to yourself and they are not believable, it gets stressful on you.
That's true.
So when you are saying something to yourself, albeit that you want to motivate yourself, the more realistic it is, the more motivation you have to achieve it. And that's also critical. Very critical.
Do you think the way you respond to how others treat you is a reflection of your self-worth?
In many instances, it is. My worry has always been, and I always say that, look, if you don't know your self-worth, somebody will have to show you your self-worth.
Somebody defines it for you.
Yes, and if they are defining it, I beg you, they will never define it to the best of your ability. Common analogy. We go to the market to go and buy something. There's a can of tomatoes. They'll tell you 10 cedi. You look at it, you say, Chad, this is a good deal. You still say, let me give you 7. Isn't it?
True.
And it's the same thing with when someone has to communicate your self-worth to you. So if you don't know your base
there's a
value,
likelihood to either underscore it, reduce it or increase it.
many people will drop it.
Yeah.
Because we are also in
A silent
competition with each other. I tell people that jealousy as an emotion is not bad. Okay, let me put it right. Jealousy, especially when you are focused on other people's accolades, means that your target is just surpassing them and there's nothing else. But if you're comparing yourself and you're saying, wow, these are attributes about this person I would like to emulate, and you are not focused on the person themselves, but their attributes, that's positive. It also spurs you on.
Within the conversation of self-worth, do you think it's important to have purpose, to have something that's like your North Star as you navigate through life?
Everything in life, if you have a structure, it works better.
Okay.
With everything in life. They'll tell you that even when people write their goals, the fact that they've written the goals, they have a higher chance of achieving them simply because they put it to paper. So goals seem like skeletons. As an academic, I tell you this, we are required to write articles. And when you think about writing an article, it's so heavy in your head. The day you sit down and do the structure, and thank God to
That's 50% of the work done.
Thank God to ChatGPT. You tell ChatGPT, structure an essay like this for me. And the structure alone just makes it seem, is it that
It's
simple?
doable.
And then you start, before you know, you're done.
Done.
And that's what your North Star does for you. It gives you a skeleton to put the flesh on to make a human being.
So, a couple of months ago, about a month and a bit ago, I did this talk on self-worth and resilience at the EAP conference. And I had a few thoughts on the lessons I have learned, right? So I'm going to share some of those lessons with you. And then you can tell me, just from a professional standpoint, where they are applicable and what you think about some of those lessons I have learned. So the first one was around boundaries. And I know a lot of the time when we think about boundaries, we think about these high up walls, right? But I have this thought, and it's another conversation we've had at different points in time, that the boundaries are actually there to protect the relationships and the friendships and yourself, right? Not necessarily to isolate you from anything. What role do you think boundaries play in building up self-worth?
See, the thing about, don't forget that your self-worth will take a hit when you have everybody taking a piece of it.
Okay.
And boundaries are one of those things that keep you intact. Now, boundaries, and sometimes people confuse self-worth with arrogance.
Okay.
Arrogance is not self-worth.
True.
Self-worth actually makes you more empathetic, because when people say things to you, you are not personalizing it because you have evidence. What boundaries do is they allow you to focus on the most important person in the interaction. Okay. You. That's what boundaries do. Okay. But without boundaries, everybody gets into
You are a city without walls.
beautiful. So that's what boundaries do. And the onset, like when you start with boundaries, people may misinterpret them. Don't worry about it. Once the boundaries have been formed, people will acknowledge you within those boundaries and even make reference and say, hey, as we create, what I appreciate about her is after 6, she doesn't work. Meanwhile, they might have been saying, at 6, we need to do this. But at some point, they'll start saying, I wish I were like her.
Yeah.
So don't be worried about setting the boundaries. Let people talk. It's their opinion. An opinion about you is not a fact. And that definitely should not be something you are worried about. No.
Or losing sleep over.
Far from that.
The next one is speaking up, right? I've found that over time, I've learned to speak up, share my points of views without imposing it on others. So I'm able to express my desires, my fears, my wants, what's important to me, right? And I find that it's a way that allows me to feel like I matter. But the differential here for me has been the fact that it's me stating something, it's not imposing something on you.
Good. It's the way you say it, is not what you say.
Okay.
So you can share your point of view. The way you say it, if I'm saying it and I'm making direct references, you get defensive. I use the words like you never, you always. You get defensive even before I start, so you are not hearing. And I then tell people, if you want to say something, I say, I feel. This is
my experience.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be about you. Your posture is necessary. Eye contact is necessary. The tone of your voice is necessary. So it's about how you're saying it and not what you're saying. Now, mind you, in saying that when people get defensive, your reaction to them is also part of the interest, the dynamic. So if you allow people to unsettle you and then you lose your train of thought or the calmness with which you are communicating, it takes it away. The easiest way for people to move away from uncomfortable conversation is using the emotion of anger.
So you come home, somebody's done something, you say, back at these books.
So then the usual thing would be when they start, you are likely to, but you, I'm also telling you, and so you get a fight. But I tell people, wait for them to throw the tantrum. And when they are done, you say, yeah, it's true, but what I'm saying, why did you go there?
Yeah.
You have, and whenever whoever leaves, the tension that's created in them is
On them.
But the other person did not show any, because most of the time we tend to want to rationalize. They said this to me, that's why I got angry. Don't give people that chance.
So that's the emotional regulation you talk
Absolutely.
about, right? Okay. Another thing is feedback is a gift, and it's a gift. Feedback is a gift, and like all gifts, you either like it or you don't like it.
That's it.
Right. But when someone gives feedback, it's supposed to help you.
Yes.
Thoughts, and then I have one more, and then I will let you go.
So you see, about feedback,
Yeah.
that's why I talked about limitations. Now, anybody that accepts they have limitations, they are able to listen to criticisms,
Okay.
whether constructive or not. Okay. Because you don't feel you are perfect, you don't feel you know it all, you don't feel you are everything. So when people are giving you feedback, you're actually listening because you know as a human being, you're not perfect. And then through a process of introspection, you query all they've said. And there are things you may find to be worthy, things that require clarification, or things that are like, okay, that's the opinion and I just let it slide.
Okay. So to wrap up this speed date conversation, if you were to think about what you'd say to people who are struggling with their self-worth today, what would those things be?
I'll give them a story. There was a man and his son riding a bicycle. Both of them were sitting on the bike.
The same bike.
The same bike. And one person saw them and said, oh, you want to spoil this bike. How can two of you be on the bike? So the man got down, his son rode the bike as he walked by him. Another person saw them. How can you, the father, be walking and your child be riding the bike? So they switched. Another person saw them. How can you, the father, be so wicked to let your child, and then both of them started walking. Another person said, how is it that you have a bike and you are walking?
Can't please anybody.
That is what self-worth is. Everybody has an opinion. But what is most important is what you think about yourself. It's okay for people to be derogatory about you whatsoever, but if you let that internal dialogue be what defines you, you're in trouble.
External dialogue, you mean?
The external dialogue, then you're in trouble. So do what pleases you the most. I have a mantra. I will not displease myself
To please you.
anybody. Call it arrogance. It's a boundary for me. And it's kept me going. It leaves you in a place of calm. And over the years, I haven't had people say, you are arrogant. So I think it's working well.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Cocktail and you go.
Mary.
Mary.
You
Soda water.
can say, this one, 100% soda water.
So, today, I'm going to make fun of you. Here we go.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
It looks like sparkling water.
But you've not even tasted the thing.
This one is a mixture of sparkling water and soda water.
There's no such thing as that. Thank you so much for coming. As usual,
Always a pleasure.
I appreciate you very
Always a
much.
pleasure.
And God bless you.
Vim.